For the soul there is neither birth nor death. It is not slain when the body is slain. These words emerge from an ancient battlefield, yet they whisper to us across millennia with startling intimacy. They speak not of war, but of the deepest truth dwelling within every human heart. On the plains of Kurukshetra, two armies stand poised for battle. Conch shells echo across the field like thunder announcing transformation. Between them, a chariot waits, carrying not just a warrior, but every soul who has ever trembled before life's impossible choices. Arjuna, the archer prince, lowers his bow. His hands shake not from weakness, but from recognition. In the faces of his enemies he sees his teachers, his cousins, his blood. How can he fight those he loves? How can he not? This moment of paralysis becomes the doorway to wisdom. Sometimes our greatest confusion arrives as grace, forcing us to question everything we thought we knew. The battlefield becomes a mirror, reflecting the war within every human heart. Krishna stands beside him, charioteer and friend, wearing the gentle smile of eternity. His presence transforms everything. The dust beneath their wheels becomes sacred ground. The crisis becomes curriculum. The moment of despair becomes the birthplace of understanding. Perhaps what we're really witnessing here is not a conversation about war, but about waking up. The Bhagavad Gita unfolds like a lotus blooming in slow motion, each petal revealing another layer of what it means to be fully alive. The dialogue begins with Arjuna's grief, and this itself is profound. Spiritual awakening often commences not with answers, but with the courage to voice our deepest uncertainties. The path to wisdom winds through the valley of honest questioning. "I see no good in killing my own kinsman," Arjuna confesses. His words carry the weight of every person who has ever stood at the crossroads between duty and desire, between what others expect and what the heart whispers. In many ways, this reflects something deeper about the human condition. We are all archers, drawing back the bowstring of decision while our targets shift and blur. We aim for clarity while swimming in the fog of our own conflicting loyalties. Krishna's response arrives like morning light, touching the mountains. He speaks not of strategies or victory, but of the eternal nature of the soul. Death, he suggests, is merely a change of clothes. The self continues, untouched, unborn, undying. This teaching penetrates like water finding its way through stone. If we are more than our bodies, more than our thoughts, more than our roles and relationships, then what are we fighting for? What are we fighting with? Who is the real warrior? The concept of dharma emerges like a river finding its course. Dharma, often translated as duty, means something far more nuanced. It is the way things naturally flow when aligned with cosmic order, the path of least resistance to truth. For Arjuna, dharma means fulfilling his role as a warrior, but Krishna reveals a deeper dimension, dharma as the soul's unique expression of divine purpose. We each carry a sacred assignment, written in the language of our deepest authenticity. Yet how do we discern this calling amidst the noise of expectation and fear? Krishna's answer unfolds gradually, like a flower teaching itself to bloom. The path begins with understanding the difference between action and attachment to results. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but not to the fruits of action, Krishna teaches. These words land like stones thrown into still water, creating ripples that reach the shores of every human endeavor. This principle transforms work into worship, effort into offering. When we release our grip on outcomes, paradoxically, we become more effective. The archer who grasps too tightly at the bow shoots arrows that fly crooked through the wind. In the modern world, this teaching whispers through corporate boardrooms and artist studios alike. The surgeon operates with skill but surrenders the patient to healing's mystery. The parent nurtures but cannot control the child's unfolding. The teacher plants seeds in silence. Krishna introduces the concept of karma, not as punishment, but as the universe's way of teaching through consequence. Every action ripples through the fabric of existence, returning to us transformed, carrying lessons we didn't know we needed. This cosmic accounting system operates beyond our ability to track or manipulate. Like a river that eventually finds the sea, our actions flow toward their natural conclusions. Understanding this brings both humility and tremendous responsibility to each moment. The battlefield itself becomes a metaphor for consciousness. Within each mind, opposing forces wage eternal war, duty against desire, wisdom against ignorance, love against fear. Every day we choose which army to strengthen with our attention. Krishna reveals himself gradually, like dawn breaking over distant hills. He is not merely Arjuna's friend, but the divine incarnate, wearing human form to deliver timeless teachings. His presence makes every word both practical advice and sacred scripture. This revelation transforms the entire conversation. We realize we are listening not just to philosophical discussion, but to the universe speaking to itself through the medium of human dialogue. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The personal becomes universal. Three paths unfold before us like tributaries of the same river. Karma Yoga, the path of selfless action. Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion. Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. Each leads to the same summit, but by different routes. The path of action teaches us to work without attachment, serving something greater than personal gain. Like a gardener who plants knowing others may harvest, we learn to find fulfillment in the process rather than possession. The path of devotion opens the heart like morning glories greeting sunrise. Through love and surrender, the ego dissolves into something vast and compassionate. Devotion becomes a form of forgetting the small self and remembering the infinite. The path of knowledge reveals reality through inquiry and meditation. Like an archaeologist of consciousness, the seeker digs through layers of false identification until the bedrock of pure awareness is exposed, gleaming and indestructible beneath. Yet Krishna emphasizes that these paths interweave like strands of a single rope. Action performed with love becomes devotion. Devotion pursued with discrimination becomes knowledge. Knowledge expressed through service becomes action. The boundaries dissolve in practice. Meditation emerges as both method and destination. Krishna describes the mind as a flickering flame in a windless place, steady, bright, unwavering. This image haunts us with its simplicity, its suggestion that peace is our natural state. The practice begins with attention to breath, the bridge between voluntary and involuntary, conscious and unconscious. Each inhalation brings possibility, each exhalation releases what no longer serves. In the space between breaths, eternity touches time. Gradually, the meditator learns to witness thoughts without becoming them. Like clouds passing through an empty sky, mental movements arise and dissolve against the backdrop of awareness. The observer remains untouched, unchanged, unborn. This witnessing consciousness reveals itself as our true identity. We are not the thoughts we think, the emotions we feel, the roles we play. We are the space in which all experience occurs, vast, luminous, eternally present. From this perspective, death loses its sting. How can that which was never born ever die? The body changes like seasons cycling through the year, but the essential self remains as constant as the space that holds all seasons. Krishna uses the metaphor of changing clothes to describe death's mystery. Just as we discard worn garments for fresh ones, the soul sheds exhausted bodies and inhabits new forms. The wearer remains, only the wardrobe changes. This teaching penetrates our deepest anxiety about impermanence. If we are eternal beings having temporary experiences, then loss becomes transformation, ending becomes beginning, death becomes another form of birth into unknown dimensions of existence. Yet this knowledge brings responsibility as well as comfort. How we live this life shapes the trajectory of our becoming. Like seeds planted in consciousness, our thoughts and actions sprout in futures we cannot yet imagine. The concept of reincarnation unfolds not as exotic doctrine, but as natural law. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Consciousness, like matter, changes form but never disappears. We are expressions of something indestructible exploring itself through time. Within this lifetime, we experience countless small deaths and rebirths. The child we were dies to become the adult we are. Yesterday's beliefs dissolve to make space for today's understanding. Every moment offers the possibility of complete renewal. Krishna reveals that attachment is the root of suffering, not attachment to things themselves, but to our ideas about how things should be. When reality differs from our preferences, we suffer. When we release preference, we discover peace. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. Rather, it means engaging fully while holding outcomes lightly, like a dancer who commits completely to each movement while remaining fluid enough to improvise. We learn passionate detachment. The divine permeates everything, Krishna teaches, yet transcends all forms. Like space that contains all objects while being touched by none, consciousness manifests as the world while remaining beyond all manifestation. This recognition transforms ordinary experience into continuous prayer. The morning coffee becomes communion, the evening sunset becomes sermon, the night's sleep becomes surrender to mystery. Every breath draws in the sacred, releases the holy. In the quietest moments, we sense this presence directly, not as belief or concept, but as the most intimate reality, closer than our own heartbeat, more essential than our next breath, more present than the present moment itself. Krishna describes himself as the taste in water, the light in the moon, the sacred syllable Om vibrating through all existence. These images point beyond themselves to the recognition that the ordinary world pulses with extraordinary consciousness. We begin to see that everything is both itself and more than itself. The tree is tree, and also the divine expressing as treeness. The mountain is mountain, and also consciousness exploring solidity. We ourselves are human, and also infinity wearing flesh. This vision culminates in Krishna's cosmic revelation, the Vishvarupa, where he shows Arjuna the entire universe contained within his divine form. Time collapses, space dissolves, all of existence appears as one stupendous body breathing itself into being. Arjuna trembles before this vision, overwhelmed by recognizing the divine as both intimate friend and ultimate reality. The familiar becomes terrible in its magnificence, terrible in its implications for how we might live if we truly understood. Yet Krishna returns to his gentle human form, reminding us that the infinite chooses to appear finite so we might approach without being consumed. Love requires a beloved, wisdom needs a student, grace seeks someone ready to receive. The teaching returns to practical matters, how to eat, sleep, work, and relate when we have glimpsed the truth behind appearances. The mystical must be integrated into the mundane, the cosmic brought down to earth. Krishna emphasizes moderation in all things. Too much food dulls the mind, too little weakens the body. Too much sleep breeds lethargy, too little creates agitation. The spiritual path winds along the middle way between extremes. This balance extends to our relationship with pleasure and pain. Neither should be sought nor avoided, but both should be met with equanimity, like a mountain that remains unmoved whether crowned with snow or kissed by sunshine. The metaphor of the lotus emerges, rooted in mud, growing through water, blooming in air and light. We too must be rooted in earthly existence while reaching toward transcendent understanding, untouched by the conditions through which we grow. Anger, Krishna warns, clouds judgment like smoke obscuring fire. It arises from unfulfilled desire and leads to delusion. The angry person forgets their true nature, acting from the small self rather than the eternal self. Fear operates similarly, contracting our vision until we see only threat and scarcity. But when we remember our indestructible essence, fear becomes simply another weather pattern moving through the sky of consciousness, temporary and ultimately harmless. Desire itself is not the enemy, but attachment to desire's fulfillment. Like fire that burns cleanly when fed appropriate fuel, desire can motivate right action when aligned with dharma rather than personal gratification. The truly wise person, Krishna explains, is like a deep lake, unshaken by the streams that flow into it, undisturbed by the rains that fall upon its surface. Pleasure and pain flow through them without creating ripples of agitation. This equanimity doesn't mean emotional numbness. Rather, it means feeling fully without being controlled by feelings. Like a skilled musician who plays every note with precision while remaining unidentified with any particular melody. Prayer transforms from petition to participation. Instead of asking the divine for favors, we learn to align our will with cosmic intelligence. Prayer becomes a way of listening rather than talking, receiving rather than requesting. Devotion ripens from emotion to absorption. The lover of God moves beyond the duality of worshipper and worshipped, discovering that love is the very substance of existence. Separation reveals itself as illusion, unity as the only reality. In relationships, we learn to see beyond personality to the eternal being wearing temporary masks. Conflict becomes opportunity for deeper understanding. Disagreement becomes invitation to discover what lies beneath our positions. The family dynamics that troubled Arjuna, fighting those he loves, mirror our own struggles with intimacy. Those closest to us often trigger our deepest reactions because they reflect parts of ourselves we haven't yet accepted. Forgiveness emerges not as moral requirement, but as practical wisdom. Holding resentment is like grasping a burning coal. We hurt ourselves more than our supposed enemy. Release brings relief, opens space for healing. Compassion flows naturally when we recognize the suffering behind all aggressive behavior. The person who attacks is usually defending against some perceived threat. Understanding this, we can respond to the pain rather than the protection. Service becomes a form of worship when performed without expectation of return. Like a river flowing toward the sea, generous action moves us toward unity with something greater than our separate concerns. Work transforms from burden to blessing when we discover our unique contribution to the cosmic symphony. Each person carries notes that only they can play, melodies that will remain unheard if they don't find their voice. The teacher-student relationship exemplified by Krishna and Arjuna reveals the sacred dimension of all learning. Knowledge passes not just through words, but through presence, example, and the mysterious transmission of understanding between open hearts. Grace operates as the universe's way of responding to sincere seeking. Like sunlight that shines equally on all while seeming to favor the flower that turns its face upward, divine assistance flows toward those who make themselves receptive. Surrender paradoxically increases rather than diminishes our power. When we stop fighting the river's current, we discover how to navigate more skillfully. Resistance creates turbulence, acceptance reveals the path of natural flow. The ego dissolves like sugar stirred into tea, not destroyed, but transformed into something that sweetens the whole. Personal identity remains, but loses its sense of separation from the larger life that contains and expresses through it. Silence becomes a teacher as profound as any scripture. In the spaces between words, understanding dawns. In the gaps between thoughts, wisdom whispers. In the pause between breaths, eternity touches time with infinite tenderness. Community forms naturally among those who walk the spiritual path. Like rivers merging as they approach the sea, Individual journeys converge in the recognition of shared destination. Loneliness dissolves in the discovery of fundamental connection. Nature reveals itself as scripture, written in a language older than words. The cycling seasons teach impermanence, the growing plants demonstrate patience, the flowing water shows persistence, the vast sky mirrors the spaciousness of consciousness itself. Children become our teachers, reminding us of the wonder we've forgotten in our hurry to become adults. Their spontaneous joy, their presence in the moment, their trust in life's unfolding, these qualities point us back toward our natural state. Dreams create a bridge between waking consciousness and deeper mysteries. In sleep, the boundaries of identity soften. We become characters in stories we don't control, experiencing the fluidity of selfhood, the creative power of consciousness exploring itself. Music touches something in us that words cannot reach. In melody and rhythm, we sense the cosmic harmonies that Krishna describes. The universe itself seems to be singing, and we discover ourselves as both listeners and instruments in this eternal composition. Art emerges from the impulse to make visible the invisible, to share glimpses of beauty and truth that cannot be captured in ordinary language. The artist becomes a translator between dimensions, a bridge builder spanning the gap between form and formlessness. Healing happens not through our efforts alone, but through alignment with life's natural tendency toward wholeness. The doctor provides conditions for healing, but healing itself remains mysterious, flowing from sources deeper than medical technique. Aging teaches us what no young person can truly understand, that we are more than our physical capabilities, more than our mental sharpness, more than our social roles. As the temporary aspects fade, the eternal aspects grow more apparent. Seasons become teachers of renewal. Spring demonstrates resurrection after apparent death. Summer shows the fullness of manifestation. Autumn teaches letting go. Winter reveals the beauty of emptiness. Each phase contains wisdom about becoming. Travel expands our sense of what it means to be human. Different cultures reflect different facets of the same essential nature. Diversity becomes a celebration of consciousness, exploring infinite ways of expressing itself through human form. Solitude creates space for the inner voice to emerge. When we stop filling every moment with external stimulation, we discover the richness of our own depths. Loneliness transforms into aloneness into all oneness. Fasting teaches the difference between need and desire. When we voluntarily abstain from even necessary things, we discover reservoirs of strength we didn't know we possessed. The body reveals its wisdom, the spirit its independence from material conditions. Celebration becomes sacred when we recognize every moment as gift. Joy arises not from specific circumstances, but from appreciation for existence itself. Gratitude transforms ordinary experience into continuous thanksgiving. Conflict serves as a teacher when approached with curiosity rather than defensiveness. What are we really fighting about? What lies beneath our positions? Often, our arguments are attempts to be seen, understood, validated in our essential worth. Money becomes a tool for dharma rather than an end in itself. Like fire, it serves when controlled but destroys when it controls us. Wealth flows most freely through those who hold it lightly, using it for purposes beyond personal accumulation. Food nourishes not just the body but the spirit when consumed with awareness and gratitude. Each meal connects us to the earth, the sun, the rain, the farmers, the entire web of relationships that makes physical existence possible. Language reveals its sacred dimension when used to heal rather than harm, to uplift rather than diminish, to reveal truth rather than hide it. Words become prayers, conversations become communion, communication becomes love in action. Listening transforms from waiting for our turn to speak into genuine receptivity. When we truly hear another person, we create sacred space for their truth to emerge. Listening becomes a form of love. Attention becomes gift. Walking becomes meditation when we move with awareness rather than hurry toward destination. Each step connects us to the earth, each breath to the sky. The journey becomes more important than arrival, process more valuable than product. Sleeping reveals the mystery of consciousness. Every night we die to the day's identity. Every morning we resurrect into renewed awareness. Sleep teaches us to trust in temporary dissolution, to have faith in return to consciousness. Weather becomes a teacher of acceptance. We cannot control the rain or sunshine, only our response to conditions as they arise. Inner weather, moods and emotions follow similar patterns, arising and passing according to natural rhythms. Breathing connects us to the universal rhythm. Each inhalation brings life force, each exhalation releases what is finished. In conscious breathing, we participate knowingly in the cosmic circulation of energy, the divine respiration of existence. Reading sacred texts becomes conversation with wisdom across centuries. The words written long ago speak directly to our present circumstances. Time collapses in the meeting of mind with mind, heart with heart, truth with truth. Gardening teaches us about patience, faith, and cooperation with natural forces. We plant seeds without guarantee of harvest, tend growth we cannot control, learn to work with rather than against the intelligence of life itself. Cooking transforms raw materials into nourishment through the alchemy of fire, attention, and love. The kitchen becomes a laboratory for transformation, a place where caring manifests as tangible sustenance for body and soul. Friendship reveals love's face stripped of romantic projection and familial obligation. Friends choose each other freely, see each other clearly, support each other's growth without expectation of ownership. Friendship becomes practice for unconditional love. Parenting confronts us with the paradox of caring without controlling, guiding without dominating, protecting without preventing growth. Children become our teachers in the art of love that sets free rather than possesses. Death approaches not as enemy but as completion, the final teacher in life's curriculum. When we understand our true nature, death becomes graduation rather than termination, transformation rather than cessation, homecoming rather than exile. Beauty appears everywhere when perception is cleansed of utilitarian thinking. The crack in the sidewalk becomes a river, the old person's face becomes a map of wisdom, the child's laughter becomes the sound of God remembering how to play. Time reveals its elastic nature when we live fully present. Minutes stretch into eternities during peak experiences. Years collapse into moments in memory. Clock time serves practical purposes. Eternal time contains the meaning of existence. Peace settles like snow on mountain peaks when we stop fighting reality and begin dancing with it. Resistance melts into cooperation. Struggle transforms into flow. Effort becomes effortless when aligned with the natural order. Love evolves from emotion to recognition to way of being. First we fall in love, then we learn to love. Finally we discover that love is what we are. The journey moves from having experiences to being the space for all experience. Truth emerges not as collection of facts, but as direct knowing beyond the need for proof. When we encounter truth, something in us relaxes, recognizes, remembers. Truth feels like coming home to something we never really left. Freedom reveals itself not as ability to do whatever we want, but as liberation from the compulsion to do anything. True freedom is choiceless choice, action arising spontaneously from wisdom rather than driven by fear or desire. Wisdom cannot be accumulated like information, but must be embodied like breath. It lives not in the mind, but as the mind, not as something we have, but as what we are when we stop pretending to be something else. Mystery deepens rather than diminishes as understanding grows. The more we learn, the more we realize how little we know. Knowledge becomes humility. Certainty transforms into wonder, answers birth better questions. Presence becomes the most precious gift we can offer, to ourselves, to others, to life itself. When we are fully here, we discover that here is everywhere, now is everywhen. This moment is all moments condensed into eternal nowness. Stillness reveals its dynamic nature when we learn to rest in the eye of activity's hurricane. Inner stillness doesn't require outer stillness, but can be found in the midst of any experience when we remember our essential nature. Consciousness recognizes itself looking through every pair of eyes, feeling through every heart, thinking through every mind. The same awareness that looks out through our face looks back at us from every other face. Emptiness shows its fullness when we stop trying to fill it with external things. The space that seems empty reveals itself as pregnant with infinite potential, the void as the womb from which all forms emerge and into which they return. Unity manifests not as bland sameness, but as harmony among infinite diversity. Like a symphony, where each instrument contributes its unique voice to create music no single instrument could produce, consciousness celebrates itself through multiplicity. Perfection appears not in the absence of flaws, but in the complete acceptance of what is. The perfect moment is this moment exactly as it is. The perfect life is this life, including all its apparent imperfections. Eternity intersects time at every moment. Infinity touches space at every point. We don't need to go somewhere else or become someone else to encounter the divine. We need only recognize what is already here, already now, already us. Hope transforms from longing for the future to trust in the present. When we understand that we already are what we seek to become, hope becomes confident expectation of the good that is always trying to emerge through us. Faith evolves from belief in propositions to trust in the process of life itself. We learn to have faith not that specific outcomes will occur, but that whatever occurs can serve our awakening, our growth, our return to wholeness. Compassion flows naturally when we see through the illusion of separation. The suffering of others becomes our own suffering not through emotional merger, but through recognition that there is no other, only the one self appearing as many. Service becomes as natural as breathing when we realize that serving others is serving the self that we are. There is nowhere to go, no one to help outside the circle of our own being, expressing itself as multiplicity. Worship transcends specific practices to become a way of meeting everything with reverence. Each encounter becomes an opportunity to bow to the divine appearing in yet another form, yet another face, yet another moment of sacred manifestation. Gratitude ripens from thankfulness for good things to appreciation for existence itself. We become grateful not only when things go our way, but for the sheer miracle of being conscious, of being able to experience anything at all. Joy bubbles up from the depths when we stop depending on circumstances for happiness. This joy needs no reason, requires no justification, depends on nothing external. It is the natural fragrance of being, the spontaneous song of existence celebrating itself. Wonder returns as our default response to existence when sophistication gives way to innocence. The most ordinary experiences reveal themselves as extraordinary when met with fresh eyes, beginner's mind, the heart of a child encountering the world. Healing happens at levels deeper than the physical when we address the spiritual roots of dis-ease. True healing restores our connection to wholeness, our alignment with the natural flow of life, our remembrance of who we really are. Teaching occurs through being as much as through words. When we embody what we understand, we become walking sermons, living prayers, breathing invitations for others to remember their own deepest truth and infinite potential. Learning continues until the last breath, as life presents us with endless opportunities to discover more about reality's infinite depths. Every experience becomes curriculum, every person becomes teacher, every moment becomes lesson in the art of being human. Growth happens not through addition but through subtraction, not by becoming something new but by removing what was never true. We grow by shedding false identities, outdated beliefs, unnecessary protections that no longer serve our becoming. Home reveals itself as wherever we are when we stop running from ourselves. Home is not a place but a presence, not a location but a recognition, not somewhere we go but something we remember we never left. Courage emerges not from fearlessness but from willingness to act appropriately despite fear. True courage is not the absence of fear but the presence of love stronger than fear, wisdom deeper than worry, trust greater than trembling. Simplicity becomes a spiritual practice when we learn to distinguish between what we need and what we think we need. Simplicity clears away the clutter, material and mental, that obscures our natural radiance, our essential peace. Forgiveness completes itself when we realize there was never anything to forgive. What seemed like harm was ignorance. What appeared as attack was call for love. Forgiveness becomes recognition of innocence beneath every apparent guilt. Integration weaves together all aspects of human experience into a seamless whole. We learn to honor both the human and divine dimensions of our nature, living fully in form while remembering our formless essence. Surrender deepens from giving up control to discovering we never had control to begin with. What seemed like surrender becomes recognition of how things actually work, alignment with the intelligence that moves the stars and grows the flowers. Awakening reveals itself as ongoing process rather than final achievement. Each moment offers new opportunities to wake up more fully, to see more clearly, to love more freely, to serve more completely. Awakening becomes way of life. Return becomes the final movement of the spiritual journey. Not return to where we started, but return to who we are with fresh understanding. We come home to ourselves, recognizing for the first time what was always already here. The conversation between Krishna and Arjuna continues in our own hearts as we face life's daily choices. Which voice will we follow, the voice of fear or the voice of wisdom, the call of ego or the invitation of the soul? Every relationship becomes opportunity to practice seeing the divine in human form. Behind every personality lives the same consciousness that looks out through our own eyes. Relationship becomes mutual recognition of shared essential nature. Each decision point becomes sacred crossroads, where we choose between love and fear, between truth and illusion, between the path that leads toward wholeness and the path that maintains separation. Choice becomes spiritual practice. Work transforms from mere earning to sacred offering when we bring consciousness to whatever we do. The trash collector and the CEO equally serve the cosmic purpose when they work with presence, integrity, devotion to excellence. Rest becomes as important as action when we understand that being and doing must dance together in balance. In rest, we recharge our spiritual batteries, remember our connection to the source, return to the wellspring of all activity. Seasons of the soul mirror. Seasons of nature as we cycle through periods of growth and dormancy, expansion and contraction, manifestation and rest. Each phase contains its own gifts, its own lessons, its own form of beauty. Community forms organically among those who recognize their shared journey home. We find our tribe not through similarity of personality, but through resonance of purpose, alignment of values, mutual commitment to awakening. Questions become more valuable than answers as we learn to live comfortably in mystery. The deepest questions open us to wonder rather than closing us in certainty. Questions become doorways rather than destinations. Ritual creates sacred space in ordinary time when performed with consciousness and intention. Simple actions, lighting candles, sharing meals, morning prayers, become bridges between mundane and sacred dimensions of existence. Stories transmit wisdom across generations as parables and myths encode truths too large for literal language. The Bhagavad Gita itself is story. Narrative that carries teaching informs the heart can receive, the soul can remember. Symbols point beyond themselves to realities that cannot be directly described. The lotus, the mountain, the ocean, the flame, these images awaken understanding at levels deeper than conceptual thought, speaking directly to intuitive wisdom. Pilgrimage happens wherever we walk with awareness and reverence. Every journey becomes sacred when we recognize that we are always walking on holy ground, always moving from one sacred moment to the next sacred moment. Legacy lives not in monuments we build, but in consciousness we embody, love we share, wisdom we demonstrate. The most lasting legacy is who we become, and how our becoming influences others to remember their own deepest truth. Time reveals its gift when we learn to inhabit the present moment fully. Past and future exist only as thoughts in the present. Reality happens now. Life occurs now. God appears now. Everything we seek waits in this eternal now. Space expands when we stop contracting around personal concerns and open to the vast dimensions of consciousness. The heart that seemed so small reveals its infinite capacity. The self that felt so separate dissolves into boundless awareness. Light becomes metaphor for consciousness illuminating the darkness of ignorance. But consciousness is not like light. Consciousness is light, the fundamental luminosity in which all experience appears, shines and dissolves back into radiance. Darkness reveals its necessity as the space that allows light to appear. Without darkness, there could be no light. Without ignorance, no awakening. Without separation, no return to unity. Opposites reveal themselves as dance partners in cosmic choreography. Music of the spheres plays continuously as the universe sings itself into existence moment by moment. When we quiet the mind's chatter, we begin to hear this underlying harmony, this cosmic symphony of which we are both instruments and audience. Dance becomes metaphor for the interplay of consciousness and energy, spirit and matter, the eternal and temporal. All existence dances. Atoms dance, planets dance, galaxies dance, thoughts dance, emotions dance. Life is dance, and we are both dancers, and the dance itself. Breath continues as the most intimate teacher, available every moment to remind us of our connection to life. In conscious breathing, we touch the source of vitality, the wellspring of peace, the bridge between voluntary and involuntary, personal and universal. Heartbeat drums the rhythm of existence, connecting us to the pulse of life itself. In the heart's consistent beating, we hear faithfulness incarnate, trust made flesh, the body's way of saying yes to life moment after moment after moment. Eyes become windows through which consciousness peers out at its own infinite creativity. When we truly see another person, we are consciousness recognizing itself, the divine beholding the divine through the miracle of human perception. Hands reach across the apparent gap between self and other, touching what can be touched, offering what can be offered, serving what can be served. In every gesture of care, consciousness extends itself. Love makes itself practical. Words carry the power to heal or harm, to reveal or conceal, to unite or divide. When we speak from awareness rather than reactivity, our words become medicine, our conversations become communion, our communication becomes blessing offered and received. Listening opens space for truth to emerge, for pain to be heard, for love to be felt. In deep listening, we offer the gift of our presence, creating sacred space where another being can unfold their truth without judgment or agenda. Silence contains all sounds, just as emptiness contains all forms, just as consciousness contains all experience. In silence, we touch the source from which all words arise and into which all words return, silence becomes our deepest teacher. Movement flows from stillness like waves arising from the ocean's depths. When action emerges from inner stillness rather than restless agitation, it carries wisdom, efficiency, grace. We learn to move from center, act from depth. Stillness reveals its dynamic nature as the creative source from which all movement emerges. In stillness, infinite potential rests, awaiting invitation to manifest. Stillness is not empty but pregnant, not dead, but supremely alive with possibility. Feeling becomes the language through which the soul communicates its wisdom. When we learn to feel fully without being controlled by feelings, emotions become guidance, sensations become information, the body becomes temple of awareness. Thinking serves consciousness when it becomes tool rather than master. The mind that once seemed to run our lives reveals itself as instrument of awareness, capable of tremendous service when properly aligned with wisdom rather than fear. Dreaming opens the door to dimensions of experience beyond waking consciousness. In dreams, we practice shape-shifting, time-traveling, reality-creating. We discover the fluid nature of identity, the creative power of consciousness exploring infinite possibilities. Waking up happens gradually and then suddenly, in small moments and great revelations. We wake up to beauty, to truth, to love, to the extraordinary nature of ordinary existence. Awakening becomes ongoing discovery rather than single event. Sleeping teaches us to trust in temporary dissolution, to have faith in return to consciousness, to rest in the mystery of where awareness goes when it withdraws from waking experience. Sleep becomes practice for the greater transitions. Eating connects us to the web of life as we take in energy that once was sunlight, air, water, earth. Each meal becomes communion with the elements, gratitude practice, recognition of our intimate interdependence with all life. Walking meditation transforms every step into prayer, every journey into pilgrimage. Whether we walk to work or walk in nature, movement becomes mindfulness practice when we bring awareness to the miracle of locomotion, of feet touching earth. Working becomes yoga when we offer our efforts without attachment to results, serve something greater than personal gain, bring consciousness to whatever tasks life presents. Any job becomes spiritual practice when performed with presence and devotion. Playing reconnects us to joy for its own sake, activity without agenda, creativity without concern for productivity. In play, we remember childhood's wisdom, spontaneity's gift, the art of being present for the sheer delight of existence. Loving matures from need-based attachment to space-giving care, from possessive emotion to liberating recognition. We learn to love not to get something, but to give something, not to fill emptiness, but to share fullness. Dying begins the moment we are born as life continuously sheds what is finished to make space for what wants to emerge. We die to childhood, to youth, to old identities, old beliefs, old ways of being, making room for new becoming. Living fully requires dancing with both life and death, embracing and releasing, holding and letting go. Life asks us to care deeply while grasping lightly, to engage fully while remaining free, to love completely while accepting impermanence. Being reveals itself as more fundamental than doing, though both have their place in the dance of existence. In being, we touch what does not change. In doing, we express what does not change through the realm of constant change. Becoming never ends as consciousness continues to explore its infinite potential through endless forms, endless experiences, endless opportunities for growth, discovery, creativity, love. We are always becoming more of what we eternally are. Remembering constitutes the deepest learning as we recall what we temporarily forgot, in the adventure of taking on human form. Spiritual awakening is remembering our divine nature while maintaining our humanity, integration of human and divine dimensions. Forgetting serves its purpose as the necessary prelude to remembering. If we never forgot our divine nature, we could not experience the joy of rediscovering it. Forgetting creates the possibility of the return journey home. Finding what we never lost becomes the ultimate treasure hunt as we search everywhere for what was always right here, always right now, always right here as the very awareness with which we search. The seeker and sought reveal their identity. Losing our way becomes the path itself as every wrong turn teaches us something about the right direction. Getting lost in the maze of human experience allows us to appreciate finding our way back to the center. Questions dissolve in direct experience as understanding moves from conceptual knowledge to embodied wisdom. We stop asking, "What is truth?" and begin living as truth. We stop seeking love and discover ourselves as love's expression. Answers arise naturally from the depth of our questioning, not as information received from outside, but as wisdom emerging from within. The deepest answers feel less like learning something new and more like remembering something forgotten. Seeking culminates in the recognition that what we sought was the seeker itself. The one who searches for God discovers they are the divine in disguise. The one who seeks enlightenment recognizes the light that was never absent. Searching ends where it began, here, now, in this moment, in this awareness, in this presence that was never absent but was temporarily overlooked in the drama of spiritual seeking, the adventure of conscious evolution. Teaching and learning merge as we realize we are always both student and teacher, always receiving and offering, always learning from life while sharing what we understand. Teaching becomes learning out loud. Learning becomes teaching through being. Giving and receiving reveal their secret unity as we discover that what we give to others we give to ourselves, what we offer to life returns to us multiplied, what we pour out creates space for more to pour in. Opening and closing both serve the rhythm of conscious life as we learn when to expand and when to contract, when to say yes and when to say no, when to include and when to discriminate. Both opening and closing become spiritual practices. Holding and releasing create the breath of conscious living as we learn to grasp what serves while letting go of what binds, to embrace what heals while releasing what hurts, to keep what nourishes while discarding what depletes. Ascending and descending complete the spiritual journey as we reach toward transcendence while embracing immanence, touch the heights of realization while serving in the valleys of human need, marry heaven and earth in our own being. Coming and going reveal themselves as movements within the unchanging as we realize that all travel happens within consciousness, all journey occurs within awareness, all seeking and finding takes place within the eternal presence that we are. Beginning and ending meet in the eternal now where every moment is both birth and death, every experience is both hello and goodbye, every breath is both first and last in the continuous creation of existence through time. Here and there collapse into presence as we understand that everywhere we can be, we are already here. Every place we might go exists within consciousness. Every destination we seek awaits in the depths of this moment. Now and then, dissolve into eternal presence as we realize that all time is contained in the present moment, all history lives in current awareness, all future exists as potential in the pregnant now of conscious being. This and that merge in unified vision as all apparent opposites reveal themselves as aspects of one reality appearing as two, one consciousness pretending to be divided, one love expressing itself through infinite forms and relationships. Self and other unite in the recognition of shared being as the boundaries between inner and outer, personal and universal, individual and cosmic, dissolve in the direct knowing of our fundamental interconnectedness, our essential unity. Human and divine marry an integrated awakening as we learn to honour both our finite form and infinite essence, both our temporary personality and eternal nature, both our individual expression and universal source. Form and formlessness dance together in conscious living as we embrace both the world of appearances and the reality beyond appearances, both the relative truth of separation and the absolute truth of unity, both the dream and the dreamer. Sacred and ordinary become one seamless reality as we discover that nothing is merely ordinary when met with sacred attention. Nothing is more sacred than ordinary life lived with extraordinary awareness, presence, gratitude. Journey and destination reveal their identity as we understand that the path is the goal, the seeking is the finding, the becoming is the being. We are always already where we are trying to go, what we are trying to become. Question and answer dissolve in lived understanding as we stop needing to know about truth and begin being truth. Stop analyzing love and start loving. Stop studying consciousness and recognize ourselves as consciousness itself expressing. Words and silence merge in speechless knowing as language points beyond itself to reality that cannot be spoken, understanding that transcends expression, communion that requires no communication because it recognizes what was never separate. In the end, we find ourselves where we began, on the battlefield of daily life, faced with choices that reveal our deepest values. But now we hear Krishna's voice in the silence of our own heart, offering eternal wisdom for this eternal moment. The Gita's teaching completes itself in how we choose to live today.